We hear a lot about why it is so important to diversify our savings and investments, and I'll be honest with you, there is so much I'm still learning. Recently, I was introduced to the opportunity of investing in precious metals, including gold. Through American Independence Gold, you can invest at some of the lowest rates in the industry. They offer IRA storage, or you can choose to keep the gold yourself. Plus, account fees are covered for a lifetime. I also love that American Independence Gold has a buyback commitment. This gives you confidence that your investment is liquid if you need the funds for whatever reason. This faith-driven, veteran-owned organization with more than 20 years' experience in helping people protect and grow their investments is offering a 5-gram gold bar with qualified purchases. What does it hurt to learn more? Just visit momslovegold.com and you will be connected to a client relations expert. They can offer top-notch service and expert advice. This episode is brought to you in partnership with Shepherd Pratt, the nation's largest private nonprofit provider of mental health, substance use, special education, developmental disability, and social services. So every once in a while, we get to include the son or daughter in our mama interviews, and this week I'm so glad we did. We sit down with 5-time Olympic gold medalist Missy Franklin and her mom, DA, and these two have such a special relationship. Behind the gold medals and that joyful smile, Missy struggled along the journey with depression, anxiety, and other difficulties that we can all relate to. How DA walked that journey with Missy is so inspiring, and I know that their story will help others. Let's start our conversation with DA before Missy joins in. So, DA, one of the things I thought was really interesting when I was looking for a photo of the two of you together that we could use perhaps to, promote this episode. Every picture that pops up of Missy Franklin, she has the biggest smile on her face. Has that always been the case?
Practically from the time she was born.
Really?
Yeah, she's always had a smile. She's had a smile, even in the water, swimming.
Yeah, that's probably when you saw it the biggest, when she was a little girl, right?
Uh-huh.
Did I hear that the way all of this started was the fact that you kind of regretted never learning to swim, and so you decided you wanted to do that with your baby daughter?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very difficult for me, being an adult, going to a lot of adult functions where there were pools, and I just felt uncomfortable in the water. And even on vacation with my husband, we love the beach, we love the ocean. But there was one time I almost drowned. We were in Mexico, and I went in the water, jumped up a couple of times, and all of a sudden there was no bottom. I couldn't touch the bottom.
Oh, wow.
And I started drifting out in the ocean, and then I ended up on rocks. And this little 12-year-old Mexican boy grabbed me and took me to the shore.
Oh, my goodness.
And I came to just lying on the beach.
Wow. So from that point on, you kind of had a fear of the water, I bet.
I had a fear, and I did not want Missy to have that same fear. And not just fear, but feeling out of it a little, feeling ostracized, not being able to join in the fun with other people.
Right, because you weren't included in the pool party or
Exactly.
or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I tried. I'd get in and talk and do a couple of little strokes that were absolutely horrible. And I just wanted my daughter for 2 reasons. One, safety, and the other, just enjoyment of the water.
I loved hearing you and Missy say that, like today, the next step for you guys is getting her now daughter to swim lessons. And I guess the importance of water safety and just being familiar with it.
That was really important to Missy. And Kate's been in the water now since, I guess, 6 months, and she's now 3.
Oh, my goodness.
She goes every week and loves it.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, and I'm sure Missy will tell you about this sometime, is that Missy was a big backstroker. Her husband is a backstroker. And every time you put Kate on her back, she starts screaming.
She
does not want to be on her back. No.
That is not going to be her stroke if we see her in the Olympics one day. Maybe the butterfly.
Well, I remember Missy saying one time, looking at her and saying, "Don't you dare be a breaststroker."
Oh, my goodness.
So it was really cute.
There's like, competition between what types of strokes people specialize in,
Right. Yes.
I guess getting her familiar with the water led to swim lessons. And then when did all of the competitive journey begin for her? She had to be really young because she made her debut in her first Olympic trial at the age of 12, right?
Yes, yes. Well, she qualified at 12, and she just turned 13 when she was in Olympic trials.
Wow. So I guess as you saw her get on a swim team in elementary school age, something had to have stood out about her in her swim lane compared to other kids.
Well, she was swimming really well when she was 3 and was snorkeling. If you put a snorkel on her and some fins, she could do length after length of the pool.
At that age?
Absolutely. And she also could even do the butterfly at that age.
Did you know anything about strokes and swimming and competition and all of that as a mom?
No, either did my husband. He was a football player. And so we knew nothing about that. But she was a very good swimmer, very young. And we had a neighborhood swim team, just a summer league. Mm-hmm. And we were over at the pool one day, and Missy was watching the kids having fun and being in the tents and playing games. And she went up to one of the coaches and said, "Could I join?" She was 4.
Wow.
And he looked at her and he said, "Well, how old are you?" And she said 4. He said, "I'm sorry, you need to be 5 to join the swim team." And she said, "Why?" She said, "Because I can swim." And she got in the water and she was doing lengths. And he said, "I'm sorry, our rules are 5. So at 5, she was the first one to sign up. She wanted to be on that team. And it was because it was so much fun. And it was obvious right from the beginning when she was watching. The kids would, especially at meets, they'd set up their tents, they'd play games, they'd play cards.
So she liked the social aspect of it too.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And I think that's really what got her into it.
Yeah. So as much as she loved swimming, she really liked being a part of a team.
Yes.
And the people and the camaraderie that being on a team brought.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's great life lessons to be learned, don't you think, when your kids are part of a team?
Oh, yes. With Missy, it was important for her to really learn to encourage the other kids as well. And she was really good at that.
When did the journey start to become maybe a little more serious? I guess because she was so young, you guys were really on this Olympic track already.
Well, we didn't like to think so. What we wanted Missy to do was really enjoy all sports and eventually make a decision of what she wanted to do, if she wanted to choose one. Mm-hmm. So she skied. We were living in Colorado. She played soccer, basketball, volleyball. And volleyball, I thought, was going to end up being her sport. She loved swimming, but she really loved the team aspect of volleyball as well, and ended up choosing swimming.
Why was it important to you and your husband that she try all these different things?
I think it was just good in terms of being with other kids and learning to give and take as part of a team. We had a rule right from the beginning when Missy would say, "May I play soccer?" We'd say, "Well, it's time commitment. The coach and the team are going to depend on you. Is that going to work for you?" And we expected that she'd go to practices and that she would be at the games and really support the team. And if she didn't like the sport she was trying, she would commit to do a season. And then if she felt that she didn't want to, she'd go talk to the coach and was able to stop at that point.
But no quitting during a season, even if she didn't like it.
No.
Mm-hmm. And that's really not her personality anyway, isn't it? Isn't she quite driven, type A, wants to do the best at whatever it is she's trying?
And she got close to the girls and close to the team really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in swimming, it's male and female. And a lot of people say, well, swimming is an individual sport, it's not a team sport. And that is not right at all. It's a huge team sport because otherwise, without all their friends, how could they possibly do length after length staring at a black line in the bottom of the pool?
Yeah.
They need someone to encourage them, to be excited for them. It's a huge team sport.
Chief cheerleader was probably her role a lot of the times, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
And yours as mom. I mean, again, she's entered a sport and excelled at a sport that you didn't know a whole lot about, so you had a learning curve as well. But at the end, you really just wanted to support your daughter in whatever it was she chose to hone in on. And I think that's all as moms we all want to do, right?
Yes. I think that the big thing was Missy had the responsibility and the accountability to look after her own sport. That wasn't my job. I thought my job was to be there, to encourage her, to help facilitate little things like being in Colorado. She had practices at 5 in the morning,
Oh, wow.
and it would be cold in the winter. And so she was expected to get up in the morning, set her alarm, get up, get us up. I'd get her breakfast ready. I'd put her parka in the dryer, the clothes dryer, to get it warm for her.
Oh,
But it was up to her to get herself off to practice.
Yeah.
And then my husband would get up and drive her.
driver. And I mean, probably leaving the house sometimes at like 4:30 in the morning or something, right?
4:30, even earlier than that.
Wow.
Because some of the pools were half an hour away, some of them were an hour.
Oh my goodness.
So that was a long drive. He'd take the dog and take the dog for a walk, waiting for her, because it wasn't time to come home and go back out again.
Did you ever have any hesitation as talks of, this becoming more serious, of Olympic trials, of things that your average or normal 12-year-old wasn't going to be exposed to, but your daughter had those opportunities? Were you ever hesitant about that?
No, it was, again, Missy who really wanted to be involved in the sport, and she wanted to succeed. It was her dream to be in the Olympics when she was in kindergarten, grade 1.
Really? You remember her talking about the Olympics then?
The teacher had them in grade 1 write down what they wanted to be in their own little printing, and also do a picture. And Missy did, you could make out a podium with a stick figure on top. And Missy would point to it and say, "I'm going to be in the Olympics."
Wow.
So
I
she-
love those stories.
She loved that, and she knew back then that that's what she loved, and that's
Yeah.
what her goal was.
And that felt like the pinnacle of her sport, I'm
Right.
sure.
Yes, yeah. And then when she was 11, she was skiing. We were going up to the mountains, and she just said, "I don't think this weekend, I'm going to ski." And we said, "Why not? I mean, we're almost there." She said, "Well, what I really want to do is be ready for Olympic trials next year, and I'm scared I'm going to get hurt." And so then she went and she talked to her coach and told him she wanted to make the Olympic trial cuts. And he was very supportive. He didn't say, "Are you crazy? How are you going to do that in a year?
Yeah.
You don't even have the other cuts that you need." There's different levels that they need to go through. And she didn't have her junior cuts, she didn't have senior cuts, and then way up here, Olympic cuts. And he said, "How are you going to do it?" And she had a whole list of things that she wanted to be at all practices. She wanted to work on specific things like her turns and her starts, and she wanted to get feedback from him after every session. She said, "Great, let's do it."
So she set realistic goals that would help
Realistic
her
goals.
get to that dream.
Herself, and this was at 11. And at 12, she got 3 cuts, and which were the times required to go to Olympic trials. And so we packed up the car and drove to Omaha, and she had a blast.
So were you guys just all in on the Olympic journey once that happened?
We wanted to do whatever she wanted to do.
Yeah.
It was going to be a lot of work. We felt that her schoolwork was also really important.
How did you manage that?
Again, we were so fortunate because Missy really looked after that herself.
Yeah.
And we didn't interfere in her practices at all unless we felt that schoolwork was being affected or she was sick and still trying to go to practice. Otherwise, we backed off, and it was between Missy and her coach. But Missy would be on the deck at a meet, and she'd have her iPad there, and she'd be doing some homework.
On the deck at the pool?
On the deck
Wow.
between events.
Tell me about how you've kind of walked through. I mean, we see her on the podium and the gold medals around her neck and all of the things that seem so positive. But I know from your perspective, you've also walked with her through some valleys, some disappointments. What have you learned as a mom about what to do in those valleys?
To be authentic. I've seen some people say to their their child or adult, it's okay, you did great. And the person knows themselves, the athlete, that they perhaps didn't do great.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the best thing that worked for us was to be authentic and to be able to say, I'm there for you. How can I help? Do you want to talk about it?
So not necessarily to sugarcoat whatever
No.
the circumstance was, but to be real, but mainly to be there.
To be there, to be supportive, and to listen. Not to talk too much, just to listen and see where she was at and what she needed from me, if she needed anything.
What was it like for you? And Missy will share about this, I'm sure, in a minute, but she's so open and so passionate about, the stigma that is related to mental health and people who are very apprehensive to take steps to get help. But she reached a point in her journey where she knew she needed help beyond, what her mom and dad could support as chief cheerleaders, as I said. And she sat down with you guys and just said, I need help beyond this. What did it mean for you that she recognized that? And then how did you parent through that journey?
There's so much involved in that. This was my child who was saying this. This was my daughter who was in pain. And as mothers, we sometimes want to be able to fix everything. We want to be able to say, come on and sit down and we'll talk and everything's going to be fine. And it had gone way past that point where Missy was always very good at hiding things.
Putting that smile on.
Always the smile, always the sparkling eyes, always the positive person, always the one who would reach out and help others, including me. Mom, are you okay? How are you feeling? What's going on? And she was hiding a lot behind that smile. And
Did you realize it?
I knew she was struggling, but I thought she was okay. I thought things would work out. I thought her dad and I would be able to help her process a lot of the things going on. And it hit us that we couldn't, that she needed someone outside of the family, outside of her parents, to really help her work through this.
I think that's a really tough thing sometimes for parents to realize, because we want to be able to be everything that our kids need. But sometimes our love is not enough, I guess would be a way to put that. That, again, in supporting that realization of needing outside help more than what we can provide as a mom, right?
Because I think sometimes there's that feeling that, what could a stranger possibly provide that I couldn't, as her mother, who's known her all her life, provide? And that takes a little getting past. I'm a physician as well, and so there were times that did help, where I could give her the same advice that I'd give some of my patients.
Yeah.
Have you thought about counseling? Have you thought about getting some outside assistance with this?
Yeah.
And I had to put on that hat and take off the mother hat. And it did help.
Yeah, I'm sure your background on that, and in recognizing that she needed that.
Yeah. And it's painful. As a mom, it was hard. And I shed a lot of tears about it. Some with Missy and some by myself.
Yeah.
I think some parents at times blame themselves. Why didn't I see this coming? Did I allow her to push herself too hard? Did I allow her to have too much responsibility and accountability? Should I have been more involved? And that didn't last very long, but it definitely was there for a while.
Did you have your own guilt to process in that, of those worries that you felt? I mean, it doesn't sound like you were a mom and dad who were pushing her. I mean, you were so clear that she drove that train.
Exactly.
And you guys were just on it with her, supporting her.
Right. And I think that, and Missy can talk more about this, I think that some of the issues came because of the success. That if you don't have the expectations from others, it's sometimes much easier to succeed. But once you've succeeded, there's expectations that come with that you're expected to live up to. I think that's where some of the the pressure comes, because if you don't live up to those expectations, then you may feel like a failure.
What does it mean for you now to see Missy use this platform she's been given to encourage other young women or people in general with her journey?
Just 100% proud of her. She's worked so hard, and now to use this talent she has for this platform, I think is helping a lot of not just athletes, but men and women, boys and girls.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's bring Missy in, and we'll kind of pause here for just a second. Okay, ladies, can we talk about the Barefaced toning pads? They are my very favorite product of the Barefaced skincare line. I use them morning and night to brighten and tighten my skin, unclog pores, and boost the effects of the other Barefaced products I use. These skin smoothing pads are packed with acids, antioxidants, and hydrating ingredients to tackle dullness, rough texture, and breakouts. A lot of my friends also purchase these for their teenagers who deal with breakouts. You can use our code MAMA15 at checkout and you will receive 15% off your first purchase of toning pads or any of the other results-driven medical-grade skincare products offered at barefaced.com. I love hearing from those of you who have tried and love the Coat Defense Daily Preventative Powder that we use on Tucker, our golden retriever. There is nothing like this product in the stores, and let me tell you, it works. It truly is a game changer when it comes to keeping his coat clean and fresh. This powder acts as a dry shampoo on Tucker, and it repels dirt and eliminates odor. He stays cleaner and fresher, and I'm a happier dog mom thanks to Coat Defense. Try it out and let me know what you think. You can visit coatdefense.com and receive 15% off your purchase with the code MAMA15. Well, the conversation just got a lot prettier because Missy is now with us. Thank you for not only being here, for bringing your sweet mom over to my house for this conversation.
Thank you for letting us do this together. This is such a good excuse for us to get to spend some time together. And as you mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of chances or opportunities for moms to get in the spotlight.
Right.
So I always love when I get to sit and witness my mom getting the recognition and attention she deserves.
And you guys have such a special relationship that this is just an awesome one to get to share with people. What is it like, though? I kind of was glancing at you every once in a while because I was thinking, how special must it be to sit here and listen to your mom recount your journey and recount her experiences as she watched you work so hard toward a goal?
Yeah. I mean, it never gets old. I think it just means so much to me. And obviously everything has different meaning now being a mom to a daughter myself.
Yes.
You know, and just sitting here and listening to her say those things about me, you know, it's just like cementing that goal that one day that's going to be very similar of, you know, I'll be able to sit here and say these things about Caitlin and she know with whatever she does, you know, but I think just, I feel so blessed to have such a positive and influential relationship with my mom and to have that example that now I get to live that out and try and be that same example and have that same relationship with my daughter.
What are some of the takeaways you would say in the way that your mother parented you that you would like to use now as you parent your daughter?
Yes, I think so much of what she talked about so beautifully was just it being so child-led. Essentially. So really letting me take the reins and just watching and seeing what am I passionate about? What do I like doing? What brings me joy? How can I support her in that while also understanding that I can do everything to get her to the pool, but she can't get in there and swim the laps for me. So at the end of the day, if it's not my goal and if I don't have that intrinsic motivation, I'm not going to reach my own dreams. And so I think that's something I really want to instill in myself as a mother of just enabling and, you know, letting Caitlin find that motivation for herself, again, in whatever it is, whether it's academics, whether it's theater, whether it's sports, whatever she's passionate about, and just supporting her around that as much as I possibly can, but really helping her understand that power of intrinsic motivation. And if she has goals and dreams for herself at the end of the day, she's going to have an amazing community around her to support her, but it's going to be her that gets her there.
Yeah. Tell me about those days of competing at the most elite level at the Olympics and looking up and seeing your parents in the stands. Like, what did that What role did their support play, would you say, in your Olympic career?
Oh, it was instrumental. I could not have done it without them. It goes back to just like Mom was talking about, all the early mornings. I could just, and she said it perfectly. Like I set my alarm and I got out of bed in the morning, but I did that knowing I was going to have a warm parka in the dryer and I was going to have breakfast ready and that my dad was going to be ready to take me there. Like there was never a morning where I got up and was like, oh, are Mom and Dad going to be ready? Like I just knew. And so that made it so much easier for me because I was like, I'm getting up to do this. They're getting up to do this for me. Like they're making the sacrifices just like I am. And so I so vividly remember in a lot of the major competitions, the pools are so big and the stands are so massive that you can't actually see where your family's sitting. And so in London in particular, I had no idea where they were and they were so high up in the rafters. But after I won my first gold medal, the first booth that you stop at for media is NBC. And they had sent a camera up to my parents from NBC. So I got to see their reaction on the screen.
Oh.
And I just immediately, like, that was what got me. Like, I just saw them in that moment. And it just made it so real of like, oh my gosh, I didn't just do this for me. I did it for all of us.
Okay, now you have to, DA, take me to that that exact moment. I want to flip the script and hear your reaction of what you remember about that.
I have to tell you a funny story that happened before that.
Oh.
Missy mentioned about the NBC cameraman, the reporter, and we were way up in the bleachers, way up. And so he had to come up with this heavy camera. There was no escalators. There was no elevators. He had to walk upstairs.
And those are usually steep stairs, really
very
high.
Steep, very small. And so he came up and he was huffing and puffing, and he got to us and he looked at my husband and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Franklin?" Dick goes, "No." And he had this look on his panic on his face.
He was
That was just
tricking
my
him.
husband's sense of humor.
Oh, bless his heart.
But back to how we felt, it was unbelievable. We were sitting there watching the race, watching Missy, and when she touched, I mean, we just started to cry.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable that we were so proud of her, but so excited for her. We knew how much this meant to her. And we didn't realize that you were going to see our reaction. What did you think of her reaction?
I said it. I loved it. It made me cry.
Yeah.
And then there was your classmates.
Yeah, that was the other really special part was my high school back home had thrown a watch party for my first race. And I was saying the NBC affiliate in Denver had a camera there.
Oh.
So it went from my parents' reaction to back home, all of my high school classmates, their reaction. They had me on like a big like projector on the wall and they were all watching my race and I got to see their reaction. So it was just, it was just so emotional.
Has that been part of the fun of this journey, is all the people who've gotten to come along with you?
It's been the best part, the absolute best part. And I say that to this day. It's just, there's nothing I'm more grateful for to the sport of swimming than the people that it's brought me, because that's what stays. Long after the suit and cap and goggles are hung up.
Yeah.
It's the people. I mean, it's my husband who I now have a daughter with. It's just like it's the ripple effect, I mean, so to speak, of the sport and what it does for you is just absolutely incredible. And you talked about the life lessons of sport earlier and of being on a team, and in everything I do in my day-to-day life, I'm using lessons that sport and swimming has taught me.
Wow.
So I'm just so eternally grateful for it.
Your mom talked so insightfully about the journey you went through as you struggled with some of what came along with being an athlete in a very stress-filled arena environment, and then some of what I guess just came along with that. Tell me about your perspective and then how it ties in now to where you're so passionate about this topic of mental health, mental well-being.
Absolutely. So my mom, as you mentioned, spoke so beautifully about this. And I love that she's vulnerable enough to talk about that piece of how it impacted her, of she had those, brief moments of, could I have done something to prevent this?
Yeah.
Did I not see something? And I think that was actually part of my fear in coming out about what I was going through, is because I was so worried about how it was going to make other people feel. And to be honest, we're both still guilty of doing that to this day, of like, we'll hold things back because we're like, oh, we don't want it to like hurt the other person or distract. Like if they've got something going on this week, we'll just tell them a little bit later. And then we get so mad at each other. We're like, how did you not tell us? So we're still not great about that. But it just stems from such a place of caring and just, you know, wanting to protect and keep the other person as safe as possible. But so I think that was part of, you know, what was so hard for me to come out. So I was like, I don't want my coaches to feel like it's their fault. I don't want my parents to feel like it's their fault. But at that point, I had felt like it was my fault for so long that I was like, I can't live with this on my own anymore. And it's just not working. And I think that's why it's so powerful for all of us to talk about it. But especially, I think sometimes people look at elite athletes as almost having this like inhuman mindset, right? Of they can push through anything.
Invincible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's often how we view ourselves as well. Like, so when this started happening in my mind, I just pushed it off for so long because I just kept thinking, I'll get through it.
Yeah.
Like I have to keep going. I have to keep pushing and I'll get through it. I'll figure it out. And I never did.
How long would you say you battled alone without really being open about it?
Oh my gosh, it was a large part of that year leading up to the Olympic Games in Rio. Okay. A large part. And it wasn't until just a few months before Olympic trials that I really was like, all right, it's here now. And I thought I would be well past this point, and I'm not. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of time left to do something.
Right.
But we've got to do something.
Do you remember sitting down with your parents and sharing how you were feeling, or was it more of a breakdown that it all came out?
I do. I remember I sat down with my coaches and my trainers, and then I sat down with my parents. And, you know, I think it was emotional for all of us, but I have to give credit to everyone involved because I think there was a lot of validation, which I really needed. And that was something I wanted to add to my mom's point earlier of, you know, like, what do you do in that moment? And I think so much of what you just want to hear is like, of course you feel like that. Like, you're 21 years old. You've won 4 Olympic golds and a bronze at 17, and you're going into your second Olympics. Of course the pressure feels unbearable. Like, how could it not, you know, rather than just like, why do I feel like this? It doesn't seem to be affecting anyone else. So is it me? Am I weak? Am I not strong enough from physically or emotionally, mentally? So there was just so much validation, which I needed of like, we hear you and we understand and we're so sorry you're going through this. And then it kind of went into action mode of like, okay, where do we go from here? There's not a whole lot of time left. So let's get you a sports psychologist. Let's get you talking to someone. And, you know, everyone, to, again, Mom's point, kind of dropping their ego for a second and saying, you know, like, we're here as coach, we're here as mom, we're here as dad, but none of us here are licensed mental health professionals. So let's find you one of those. And let's start there. And then same thing happened after the Olympics as well, of like, okay, you know, we're still struggling. We still need to figure some stuff out. So what do we put in place to get me healthy?
Yeah.
Again,
what do you remember about your mom's support in particular through those darker days?
I mean, she said it so well. Just the listening is something my mom has always been so good at. And I think especially, I mean, it's funny now, even with a 3-year-old daughter, I feel this. But I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to say the right thing. And it's not about saying the right thing. It's truly just about listening and being there. And when you can take that pressure off yourself, when someone comes to you and is open about what they're going through, and you know that your job in that moment is literally just to sit there and validate and say, what do you need? How can I help? Like, I think that takes so much away from it. And I think that's something my mom definitely learned. Like, I think towards the beginning, she felt like there was something she needed to say to make it better.
For sure. And DA, don't you think that naturally as moms, we want to fix it?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to just listen. I want to, okay, I've heard you. Now I'm going to help you fix it. And we can't do that on our own so often.
Yes. And I remember Missy coming to me the first time, and I remember me saying that. Not just how can I help, but what are we going to do? You know, how can I help you do something about this, rather than saying, what do you want to do?
Right.
And may I help? what way can I help?
And no truer words have been spoken when you say we, because anything our kids are going through, we feel like we're going through.
Oh, I felt
we are
it.
we.
Yes. Yeah, I felt it. I felt her pain. And it was really hard to see it. And it sounds silly to say this, but I really wanted to take that pain away
Oh, for sure.
and just free her from that. And I couldn't.
Yeah.
And there were so many things in the past that we had done together. And I had been able to help her fix. And this was different.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was different. And I knew she
Beyond.
was going to have to go through a lot of pain to come out the other side. And you did.
Yep.
I mean, it's still a work in progress, and we realize that. And it's still a work for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, your mental health is like your physical health. If you work out for 6 months and then never work out again, you're not going to stay strong.
It's a great
right?
analogy.
So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
it's the same with your mental health, and it's just healing in general. It's not linear. You know, you don't experience something, you know, and then it's just straight on up from there out. Like
Yeah.
our physical health, our mental health, life in general is just, it's full of peaks and valleys, like you said. And so every time we're in the valley, we get tools
Yeah.
to figure out, how do we get out? How do we climb out? How do we work our way back to the peak? And then you appreciate the peak and you take it in and you have different perspective. And then you hit a valley again and you say, all right, where are my tools? What else am I going to learn? What else am I going to pick up? And then you also begin to realize that the tools that you pick up in your own valley can help other people in their valleys too. And that's
Yeah.
why it's so important to talk about it.
Which is going to make you such an amazing mom
Oh,
as your sweet
thank
daughter
you.
grows up.
she
and you're-
already is.
I know she is. I know
She is incredible. She's just so patient. I'll say to my husband, I don't think I could ever have been like that.
Word.
You're magnificent.
I didn't learn it from nothing.
You got it from your mama, right?
Exactly.
There's one other thing I wanted you to talk about because I really related. I heard you talk about this on a podcast recently, Missy. I think I identified with it so much because I see that the journey that my son, who's in the spotlight in country music, walks through. But you were talking about how particularly nowadays for these athletes who are in the Olympics, it's not enough to just be the best at your sport. There's such a commercialized portion of what they're doing. So it doesn't matter how incredibly talented, spoken from a mother, my son is, right? There's so much more that goes along with it. You've got to be able to do the TikToks, and you've got to be able to have this much of a following, and you've got to have the personality for this. It's so much more than the skill set that the pressure now for anyone trying to be the best at anything is just tenfold than what it used to be.
It really is. And I think there's wonderful things about it. I think it allows us to reach a wider audience and share messages that are important. But I think the part that breaks my heart is it makes, whether it's athletes or musicians or actors or anyone that's in the spotlight, sometimes feel as if they have to be other than or more than just who they are, because they have to adapt to an industry that thrives on certain things. And you know, I feel grateful that my career was towards the beginning of social media and as we're coming out, but it's something that I still experience now. I mean, a lot of the work that I do now is around social, and it's so funny looking at, you know, how we talk so much about the importance of not putting your whole identity and self-worth into the thing that you're best at or to the thing that takes up the most of your time. And that happened with me for swimming, which was what led to so much hardship, because when swimming stopped going my way, my self-worth just absolutely plummeted because I didn't know what else I had to
Because
offer.
for so long, you were Missy
was it.
Franklin, the Olympic
Yes,
swimmer.
Exactly. Like that was the
You were known by the
identifier.
jewelry on your neck.
Yes, like that was it. And so now even today, it's so interesting when I can catch myself doing that of, you know, when brands are like, oh, send us the insights from this post. And I'm like looking at how many people engaged in it. And I'm like, oh, that's not great, you know? And you can start to feel like, is it me? Like, am I doing so? Is it my personality? Is it my...
Absolutely.
And it's just, I really have to catch myself in those moments with like, you know what, I understand that this is important and this is the part of the world that we live in, but I just have to be very conscious of not letting myself get too caught up in it and just know I'm doing my best. And at the end of the day, the number one thing that matters is I'm being authentic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it was really interesting when you were 17, a junior in high school, That's when she was on the Olympic team in London and had such incredible success. And all of a sudden, every media outlet, every brand was after her and questioning her. And Missy felt like Missy Franklin the Olympian. And then she goes back to high school, and she's in her senior year. She walks into the school, and she said for the first time in a long time, she felt happy and comfortable because they accepted her as just Missy. Not Missy Franklin, the Olympian.
Missy, their classmate.
But Missy the
girl.
classic, Missy their friend, Missy who they had known for years. And you were truly happy there.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for that experience. I think that was crucial in me coming home to have a place where I could be just Missy.
And you got to have a normal senior year
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
all the things that were important. Did you work hard to make sure that things were pretty normal at home, even though you had this star in your house?
Again, Missy made the choices. For instance, she did 2 proms.
I'm a dancing girl, so I was gonna do all the proms I
All
could
the
do.
proms. Ask me to prom. I will say yes.
Yep.
But she had her own way of handling it. One of the proms, they had a sleepover at someone's house, and then they had breakfast. So Missy left the sleepover, went to practice, came back after practice, and made breakfast for everyone.
Oh my goodness.
But that was her choice. We
Yes,
didn't.
I was dying, by the way. That practice was awful.
I'm sure you're
It
like,
was
okay,
so
why
bad.
did I bother?
But I went.
And it was the same thing when she was younger. She'd say someone was going to have a birthday party and it was a sleepover party. She'd say, I've got practice in the morning. I really can't stay over. Would it be okay if I went to the party and you picked me up at 10, Mom? I'd say, sure, that works.
She just figured it out.
But she figured it out. So I didn't have to work hard in terms of figuring out the balance between her social life and her swimming. I mean, they both made her happy. She just had to figure out how to balance it.
Right. But
And
you
we
do
helped.
realize not every mom has raised teenagers has been this lucky with such a responsible, priority-driven kid, right?
We were really fortunate.
Yes, you definitely were. Well, I would love to wrap with this, but I would love to know, we've kind of talked about it, and I have a feeling I'll know some of what you'll say here, but I do love to ask my guests what they think they got from their mama. So I would love to know from you, Missy, what character traits, and so would your mom. She's like, what is this?
that sounds good.
What you would say that you've gotten from DA, and then I want to know what you already see in your daughter that's like you, and you may have a little bit of insight in that, DA.
You know what the really cool thing is? I think it's the same answer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is so beautiful, the way that it gets passed down through generations. I think the main thing I got from my mom is her empathy. I've just never met someone that is so wholeheartedly invested into other
thank
people
you.
and like their emotions and that's why it can be hard to tell her that stuff, right? Because I know if I'm in pain, she's in pain.
Yes.
If anyone she loves is going through anything, like she is in it with them and she's feeling that. But on the bright side too, if they're going through something wonderful and exciting, she's feeling all of that. You can see the joy and the excitement and the love. And I'm already seeing that in Caitlin with her friends. Like if one of her friends at a class is having a hard time being away from their parents and crying, she's going over and she's hugging them and she's, asking them if they're okay and holding their hand. And same if her friends are happy and like she loves the excitement, she just feeds off of it. So I think that that's something that's really gone through all three of us, is just this empathy, which can be emotionally exhausting sometimes because you just care so much about every person in your life. But when you learn how to balance it and make sure you're taking care of yourself too, I think it's a really beautiful trait to have.
Do you feel like you'll be able to use some of the skill sets that you've learned, some of those tools in mothering and helping your daughter as she grows up?
Absolutely, 100%. One that I talk about, kind of joking, but it's really true, is just this idea of delayed gratification. I think we live in a culture that is so quick fix, and so what is the easiest way to get from here to there, and what's the least amount of effort we have to put in? How can we make it happen now? So I feel so grateful to have grown up in a sport that is really an Olympic sport. People truly only watch it every 4 years. We're trying to work on that and change that, but it's an Olympic sport. It's every 4 years for us. So, I mean, if you can imagine waking up and training 4 to 6 hours a day for something that's happening in 4 years, it just really teaches you you have to put the work in, and the good things are going to take time and they're going to take effort. And in my mind, that is parenthood, right? Like even at 3 years old, we're putting in the effort, we're putting in the patience and the understanding and the conversations of this is why we do this and this is why we don't do this. So that, you know, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to have a wonderful human being that we are already so proud of and love so much. But I think that's a big part of it, is it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, but you know it's going to be so worth it to just see your child flourish in the world.
That is great parenting advice right there. Thank you both. What a just a beautiful conversation and meaningful. And I know it's going to bless a lot of people who listen. And y'all have a precious relationship, and I know you're grateful for it.
We are.
We are.
So thank
Yeah.
you for
Absolutely.
having us, giving us
Yeah.
a chance to brag about each other.
I know. It's precious. I loved being the spectator to that. It was fabulous. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much to both DA and Missy, two incredible moms with so much insight. And I bet there are so many of you who can actually relate to raising a child who has a people-pleasing personality. Let's continue the conversation now with Dr. Harsh Trivedi, child psychiatrist and CEO of Shepherd Pratt. He has some additional insight on parenting focused, high-achieving, and yes, people-pleasing children. Dr. Trivedi, once again, we're so just appreciative to have you on with us and for you to share your insight. This was such a lovely conversation. And honestly, I think one of the most beautiful communicative ways that I've heard someone talk about their experience, especially as mother and daughter, of walking through their journey. They were so vulnerable, but the insight and the wisdom that they shared was just, I think, really useful, and is really going to bless so many people who get to listen to this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say thank you for having me again. And I think there's this thing where, you know, everyone's on their journey, but if you can actually be in the place where you share a journey together, which is really, I think, what they were exhibiting so well, it just makes it so much more special and meaningful. And I think, I mean, relationships, particularly really strong bonds, make such a big difference.
Yeah, and they obviously had quite the mother-daughter bond. It was very special. And to hear them kind of feed off of each other and what they gained from their portion of the journey. And what I really loved, and I hope that you can see and hear it in the interview, but how special it was for each of them to hear their perspective of what it was like for them to walk through the valleys that they walked through. One of the common themes that I noticed, and I kept thinking, I have so many mom friends who I know can relate to this, but there was this pattern of Missy being a people pleaser, and has been since she was a young child. And it's almost like these children have been given an extra dose of sensitivity or empathy. And sometimes I guess that can actually lead to issues that maybe other people don't have. Can you talk about that for me?
Sure. You know, I think one of the things that's hardest for every child as they're growing up is really, how do you know you're doing the right thing, right? And so early on in life, you are looking to the adults in your life, mom and dad, and kind of looking to see, well, am I doing the right thing, or am I living up to expectations? One of the hardest things, particularly as kids get to adolescence, is really, how do you figure out who you are? And then most importantly, making your own determination whether you're doing the right thing or not. I think particularly when you're, let's just say, competing or in front of others, you have many more critics or people that are judging you. There's actually a safety, I will just say, or a sense of comfort in going back to your trusted adult, which in her case is definitely mom, and kind of saying like, okay, was that okay? Was that good? It's good in the sense that it helps manage anxiety for the child. It also kind of gives you someone that's going to give you the right support, but it also feeds into what you just talked about, which is you then kind of, you're always looking for that external validation. And I think one of the things that's hard, particularly as you become an independent adult, is really those pats on the back or that feedback doesn't come quite as frequently, or it can be coming from people that can be a lot more critical than a supportive parent. And I think that balance is a particularly difficult one in the transition to, how do you know you're doing something because you want to do it, or that you know you've done the best that you can, and it's okay if maybe the outcome isn't exactly what you pictured, but you knew that you gave it your all. And I think all of those things are kind of part of that conversation, but also part of that transition to adulthood.
I thought it was interesting when DA talked about that she felt like the key advice that she would give is to be authentic in your parenting. And the example that she used for that was talking about how maybe Missy didn't swim her best race. And so her and her husband did not treat Missy or speak to her in a way that was like, oh, it was great. It was awesome. Wow, you did so much better. She was real because she knew that Missy was smart enough to know that wasn't my best race. So instead, she wrapped it around, you know what? You did okay and you can get it next time, and just being supportive. But also, she was very real and authentic with her without being too hard on her.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the key points is that, as much as I say as a parent, you know your child the best, the reality is your child also knows you as a parent the best. And so you're not going to pull a fast one on them. They will know when you're being authentic and sincere. They will also know when you're kind of sugarcoating things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in some ways that may actually hurt more to not just get the, well, if you did this, or like you could have done better, or hey, you'll do better next time. That authenticity is important, really, I'll just say, not in terms of the immediate feedback, but it actually builds a much stronger bond that's actually based on trust.
Mm-hmm.
Your kid is trusting you that you're going to give what is the real feedback. And you want that to be there because there will be some times where you have to message some really hard things, but they also know it's coming from a place of love where you want them to grow and to be able to make the next steps in their journey, whichever journey that is.
That is so good. Yeah, that's a great perspective. DA talked about really dealing with the fact that it was very hard for her, and she even has a clinical physician background, but it was very hard for her to realize that when Missy did sit down with them and say, okay, the anxiety, the depression, the thoughts I'm having are not healthy, I need help. DA talked about how it was very difficult for her to realize that she wasn't enough and that she needed outside help. And I think it sounds like that's a pretty common theme for parents. And I'm guessing in your background as a child psychiatrist that you see parents who are also reluctant to take that very necessary step to get help for their kids.
I think long before you get to mental health challenges, I think there's a part of this where when your child is young, like you are their entire world. As they start to get older, things start to pop up. And I think there's this loss that parents feel because there are just some things for which you can't be everything for your child. And then particularly when you see them hurting, like a kid that may be sad, depressed, anxious, but also say even kids that have physical issues. So there are kids who have cancer or kind of, let's say, an asthma attack. There's no worse feeling than seeing your child struggling and not knowing how to help them in that moment. And I think I'll just say one of the healthiest things to do is to really be able to realize that or see that in yourself to figure out maybe it's pushing some of the buttons from your own childhood or your own relationship with your parents. And I think those things are helpful because it helps to get your baggage out of the way so that you can be fully focused on helping your child. And I think particularly I'll just say I'm a child psychiatrist. When I walk home and I open the door, guess what? I'm just dad, right? And so all those things that work professionally when I'm in the office, my kids know me well enough that they will make sure that none of those things work out the right way when I'm at home. But I say that in an incredibly vulnerable way because like I've spent like decades of my life learning how to do this. And I'm telling you, I go home and I can be just as bad as any other dad walking into the house that stupidly says the wrong thing or puts their foot in their mouth. Like we're all human beings. And so part of that is I'll go back to there also has to be enough grace to say I'm doing the best I can in the moment. I may mess it up, but at the same time, I'm going to make sure I get it to the right spot at the end.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate your vulnerability. The expert here makes us all feel better, that's for sure.
I think you could call my wife and she'll give you like 30 more examples.
I'm sure.
It's all good.
Exactly. So I wanted to talk about another value that they placed and how important it is the role that team sports play for kids, and particularly in building resiliency and communication skills, social skills, all of those things. And that's something that both Missy and her mom really emphasized, is how important it was. And she uses those skills even now today that she learned as being a part of a team in everyday life.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most important things I'd say, particularly in the world where we have so much social media, particularly post-COVID, where I think a lot of people lost some of those skills of being with others and relating. Particularly, I would say in team sports, there's a whole aspect about, well, how do you, depending on the sport, share the ball? What makes you a good teammate? How do you support somebody else? How do you develop sensitivity or empathy towards other people? How do you learn to rely on someone else for the outcome of the game? So you may not be necessarily taking that most important shot, but other times it could be, how do you make sure that you have the right assist, or that you are doing all the other things, even maybe from the bench? All of those, I would say, translate into life lessons for the rest of life, because when you go to work, you are in a team-based environment. When you end up in a relationship and you have a spouse and kids, that's another bit kind of team that you're in. And so the fundamentals of really, how do we relate to others? How do we pick up what's going on in the room? How do we understand what's not being said? What's maybe there that people are feeling? How do you learn to be supportive? And then how do you help to bring out the best in everyone else around you? How do you leave a space better than how you found it? If you can do those things, you will succeed in any room that you walk into. And I think team sports really helps you understand the importance of that.
We've heard this repeatedly in these conversations that you and I have been able to kind of break down and talk about. But I loved when Missy talked about the importance of mental health and making it a priority in your life. She correlated it to, if you go and you work out every once in a while, but you don't really keep up your workouts, you're not going to be the strong person that you want to be. And so she correlated that to therapy and how important it is for her even now to keep those tools in the tool belt and just to really prioritize her mental health.
Some of the examples that I think we can most relate to maybe come on the physical side, not the mental health side. But like if you've got a pain in your shoulder or something, and you keep on trying to throw a pitch and it hurts more, and you still keep on throwing more pitches, well, guess what? You're only going to make your injury worse. And I think mental health is the same way, in the sense that if you can learn to understand the signs, your body does tell you that there's something wrong. That gnawing feeling at the pit of your stomach is there because, well, you're feeling anxiety. The mood that you may be in, or kind of some of the things that you're feeling, if you don't listen to them or you don't address them, they get worse. Similar to kind of that shoulder pain example. I think the other part of this, though, is we just have so many things going on in our regular day. And I will just say, the residue, the baggage, the things that wear on us that happen each day today, I think have been multiplied than what we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so if you're not mindful about making sure that you kind of clean those things out, that you are ready for the next thing or the next challenge that comes up, it does weigh on you a lot more. And so I think that is incredibly great advice. And I would say, I fully agree, very eloquently said, in terms of making that mental health part, that wellness portion, really dealing with the things that are going to impact your mental health, would probably be some of the healthiest things to do in the day.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again for, I love to break down these conversations when I'm in the midst of them and I'm talking like, ooh, that's so good. That's great advice. And then I'm like, now I can't wait to hear what Dr. Trivedi has to say about these things that we just talked about that are so important. So thank you once again. I appreciate it. And we do want everyone to know that they can find out more about mental health, mental well-being, and resources that are available by visiting shepherdpratt.org. We will talk again very soon, Dr. Trivedi. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.